Hello and welcome to Dining with Death, True Crime Tuesday. Today we are talking about a terrifying case in which two girls became convinced that they had to commit murder. This is the Slender Man Stabbing. Let's get into it. The boogeyman. Every culture has one. Most have many. In Russia, he is called the Baba Yaga. In Latin America, he is El Cuco. In Germany, he is called Butzemann. In Nepal, he is called Guru Mappa. In the Netherlands, the Balkan Riders. And Japan, he is Kappa. The boogeyman exists in folklore and legend for a number of reasons. He is there to frighten little children who are behaving badly. He is used by parents to warn their kids of what happens if they go into the woods or park on a lover's lane. But to some, he is real. Many people firmly believe in Bigfoot. Others believe in the Mothman. The Jersey Devil has been reported by hundreds of people over the years. And recently, a new boogeyman has emerged, born on the internet in the world of creepypasta. Creepypasta is the umbrella term for user-made scary stories that are posted on the internet. It began in chat rooms in the early days of online communities and grew rapidly in popularity. Users post their spooky tales along with artwork of the monsters in their stories, and those of us who like all things horror eat it up. Many stories have come and gone, but one figure emerged from creepypasta in a way that no other did. He is now a part of our American culture, and the events that we are going to discuss today help to put him there. This is Slender Man. He was created by Eric Knudsen and posted in the horror forum Something Awful in 2009. He is depicted as an unnaturally thin, tall, featureless face wearing a black suit. In the lore surrounding Slenderman, he stalks and abducts children and teenagers. He is depicted standing in the distance, watching kids play at the park, walking past security cameras, and standing, watching in the woods. There are many videos online where kids claim to see Slenderman watching them from the trees. The teens run, screaming from the figure they claim to have seen. There are more photos than you can count of Slenderman online. He is always standing, watching, and seemingly waiting for his chance to strike. He has terrified kids for over a decade now and has earned his spot in the legend of the boogeyman. This particular legend comes with a warning. Don't look or it takes you. To most, he is nothing but an urban legend, but to others, he is very, very real. So real to a group of young girls that they decided to do his bidding. On Saturday morning, May 31st, 2014, a call came into 911 dispatch at the Waukesha County Sheriff's Department. A citizen, Greg Steinberg, had called to say he found a girl on Big Bend Road, bleeding and covered in stab wounds, and asking for help. The girl was Peyton Lautner, and she had one hell of a story to tell. This story is so twisted and so deviant that if it weren't so well documented, it would be difficult to believe it actually happened. There are three 12-year-old girls at the center of this story: Anissa Wire, Morgan Geyser, and Peyton Lautner. The three girls were friends. Morgan and Peyton had known each other since kindergarten. Anissa was new to their school. Anissa and Morgan had been friends throughout the school year after meeting on the school bus. Morgan introduced Anissa to Peyton at school one day. Morgan and Peyton, acquaintances since kindergarten, had been very close, best friends in fact, since the 4th grade. So Anissa was kind of the new one, and the three began to hang out together. As the mom of once teenage girls, I can say 3 teen-ish girls in a group is sometimes a very bad thing, especially if one of them is a new girl. It's just the nature of teenage girls. At some point in the friendship, Anissa and Morgan became obsessed with Slenderman and had this idea that they had to prove kind of their loyalty to him. And if they didn't, Slenderman would kill their families. Peyton wasn't as into talking about and reading about Slenderman as the other two girls were, but Morgan and Anissa were obsessed. Their obsession grew, and soon they went about making a plan to kill Peyton in order to appease Slenderman and to win his favor. They discussed this plan for nearly 5 months before putting it into action. May 30th, 2014. The night prior to the attack, there had been a sleepover at Morgan's house for Morgan's 12th birthday. Now, I'm going to say something here that some of you may not like. My father spent decades on the bench as a juvenile judge. He saw a lot of things in those years. When he was appointed to be a judge, my children were very little. After about a year on the bench, he sat me down and said, "You are not to allow your children to attend sleepovers. Not anywhere, not anytime. It doesn't matter who the family is. It doesn't matter how nice they are. Bad things happen at sleepovers, and I want you to make a rule with my grandkids that they will not attend sleepovers." This issue caused more tantrums and more fits and fighting in my house than any other issue. And there was a family across the street that we were great friends with. I loved the kids, I loved the parents. But then the problem becomes, how do I say, oh, this family is okay for my kids to sleep at their house, but your family isn't? That's incredibly judgmental. So we just had to put a rule in place that said no sleepovers. Now, did we always 100% stick to it? No. But for the most part, we did. And when the kids would be really upset about it, we started having what we called late nights, where the kids were allowed to stay over until midnight but could not sleep over. And that usually appeased them. So take it from an old lady, but if you knew the statistics of older child, I'm going to use the term abuse, like an older brother or sister of the person having the sleepover against younger visiting children, you would rethink sleepovers, just saying. At this sleepover, Morgan and Anissa put their plan into motion. In the bedroom, Morgan apparently hit Peyton over the head, trying to knock her out or knock her down. But Peyton screamed and the two girls panicked. Anissa claims Morgan said, "I can't do this," and that she had to, quote, pet Morgan like a cat to calm her down. For some reason, Peyton stayed at the sleepover even after this happened. After the sleepover, the next morning after breakfast, Anissa, Morgan, and Peyton went into the woods. The girls began playing a game of hide and seek. Anissa reports that the plan was to let Peyton hide, and then, quote, Morgan and I were going to be like lionesses chasing down a zebra. Suddenly, Anissa and Morgan attacked Peyton. Morgan jumped on Peyton's back. They pinned Peyton to the ground. Morgan then handed Anissa the knife and said, "I can't do it. You know where all the soft spots are." Anissa handed the knife back to Morgan. Peyton lay on the ground and she looked up as Morgan held the knife over her. Anissa looked at Morgan and said, "You do it. Go ballistic. Go crazy. Make sure she's down." Morgan replied, "I'm not going to do it until you tell me to." Anissa claims she began walking away, turned and said, "Now." Morgan turned to Peyton and said, "Don't be afraid. I'm only a little kitty cat." Morgan, now sitting on Peyton's legs, leaned over very close to Peyton's ear and whispered, "I'm so sorry," and then began stabbing her over and over and over. Peyton screamed and pleaded for her friend to stop, but she did not. Morgan continued, stabbing Peyton 19 times in the arms, legs, and torso with a 5-inch blade. 2 of Peyton's major organs were hit. One of the stabbings missed a major artery of her heart by less than a millimeter, and another went through her diaphragm, cutting into her liver and her stomach. Morgan seemed to be in a frenzy. Finally, Morgan stopped and left Peyton bleeding and crying on the ground. Anissa and Morgan then told their friend Peyton that they were going to go and get help, but that is not what they did. They left the scene of the attack and did not tell anyone what they had done, leaving Peyton for dead in the woods. Peyton knew she had to save herself. She began dragging her wounded body across the dirt floor of the forest towards the nearest road. She managed to get up onto the sidewalk of Big Bend Road, where she was found by a cyclist, Greg Steinberg. Peyton stopped him and said, "Can you help me, please? I've been stabbed multiple times." Steinberg called 911 and stayed with her until help arrived. When Peyton was asked who stabbed her, she simply said, "My best friend." That is terrifying and tragic and just plain awful. Peyton was rushed to the hospital where she was treated for stab wounds to her chest and abdomen, as well as to her arms and legs. She was then placed in intensive care. Because Peyton was able to tell the cyclist who found her and the police who had stabbed her, the search began immediately for the attackers. Anissa and Morgan were spotted and picked up on the interstate as they walked along the side of the road. They told the police they were, quote, walking to Slenderman's mansion. The girls were taken into custody. DNA swabs were taken from their mouths and they were interviewed. The girls were then taken into individual interview rooms for questioning. One of the girls asking if Bella, again, Peyton's nickname was Bella, was dead, and the other one asking how far she had walked because she's not very athletic. I don't know, you can take a lot of different things from those questions. June of 2014. Anissa told the police that she wanted to prove to everyone that Slenderman was real and that she felt she could do that by killing someone. In their police interviews, they described Slenderman to the detectives, and you can hear the obsession in the way they speak about him. They want to speak about him. They're excited to tell the police about who Slenderman is. Morgan claimed she believed that her own family would be in danger if she and Anissa didn't follow through with their plan. Anissa claimed Morgan told her Slenderman would kill their families. During their description of Slenderman, Morgan said, "He's everywhere." The detective asks, "How do you know that?" And Morgan says, "Because I've read so many things about him." The girls claimed Slenderman was stalking them, even in their dreams. Anissa describes how Slenderman has what she calls proxies, that she says are servants to Slenderman, and that the two girls decided they should be his proxies. Anissa claims she asked, "How do we become proxies?" And Morgan replied, "We have to kill Bella." The girls said they, quote, wanted Slenderman to like them. Throughout their police interviews, Morgan and Anissa blamed each other for the plan, for the attack, for the entire event. Both girls also told the police that they didn't really want to kill Peyton, but that they were afraid of what Slenderman would do to them if they didn't. It's very strange. They were afraid of him and also kind of enamored of him. The two girls were charged as adults. I'm going to be totally honest here. I don't know if I agree with that. On top of being a mom, in my earlier life, I was a dance teacher. I owned a large dance studio here in Utah, and throughout the course of the 10 years that I owned that studio, I had several thousand students, many of them in the 11 to 13 year age range. That's an awkward age. Some girls that age are very mature, and some girls that age are very childlike children, and even youngish children at that. Now, I'm not saying that these two girls didn't know what they were doing was wrong. Of course they did. They took a knife from the kitchen, they made plans to hide Peyton's body, they had plans to run. So yes, they knew this was wrong. But at what point do we determine that a child doesn't really, truly believe in things like the boogeyman anymore? Some adults still believe in the boogeyman and other things, as we've seen of late, and these are little kids, little girls. So being charged as adults, that's a tough question for me anyway. These girls were obsessed with Slenderman, and like I say, they seemed a little infatuated with him as well. They definitely have got to be punished. They've got to be treated. I'm just saying that personally, I am really on the fence with this issue of charging kids this young as adults. They're very, very young. Interviews with Anissa and Morgan's parents are also very interesting. Morgan's own mother says that they noticed something different about Morgan very early in her life. She did not have the normal reactions to scary or sad events. She tells a story about watching Bambi with Morgan. When Bambi's mother is shot, still such a traumatic moment in movies, right? Morgan did not have the typical reaction of being sad for the death. Instead, she said, "Run, Bambi, save yourself." This is somewhat chilling to me because, as those of us who follow a lot of true crime know, Sociopaths and psychopaths do not have usual empathy responses, and this kind of seems to be a sign of that. Morgan's mother also says that she read Stephen King's It and other scary stories as a kid, and so she thought Morgan's obsession with Slender Man was like a Stephen King novel and was normal for a kid her age, and I can see why she would think that. Anissa's father said she was required to keep her bedroom door open at all times, especially when she was on the internet chatting or on FaceTime. He said, apart from sitting in the corner watching every move she made, I don't know how much more involved I could have been. This is really a cautionary tale about how little most parents know about their children's private lives. As my own kids have become adults and told me things that they hid from me back then, it's become really apparent that that's very true. I hid things from my parents when I was a kid. And yes, kids need some level of privacy. I truly believe that. But how much? That's a parent's personal decision, and you just kind of have to proceed with caution. Peyton Lautner survived this terrible event. That is the good news here. She spent weeks in intensive care and pulled through with 25 resulting scars. She has recovered fully physically, and I certainly hope mentally as much as can be expected.
I didn't feel anything because my body was in shock.
The girls were held in custody until their trials. They were granted limited visitation by their parents only and were allowed to speak with other friends and relatives on the phone. Morgan and Anissa's defense attorneys filed motion after motion to have their cases moved to juvenile court. The attorneys were not successful, and both girls continued to trial charged as adults. There have since been multiple appeals on that decision. August of 2014. In a pretrial hearing, an expert witness gives testimony that convinces the judge that Morgan is incompetent to stand trial. This expert stated that Morgan was convinced Slender Man was real, that she most likely suffers from undiagnosed mental illness, and that she is lost in a world of fantasy. In Anissa's case, a psychiatrist who examined Anissa stated that she suffers from a delusional disorder called schizotyping, which is a diminished ability to determine what's real and what's not, but that she does not exhibit sociopathic or psychopathic traits. I found that diagnosis very interesting. Like I said at the beginning of this episode, we see this even in adults. I think it's more common than we'd like to believe. Based on this testimony, the judge suspends the prosecution and sets a status report for November 12th of 2014. December of 2014. Waukesha County Circuit Judge Michael Boren rules that both girls can understand the charges against them and can participate in their own defense. I don't know about you, but I had no idea how the courts worked when I was 12 years old. So again, this is what I'm talking about. Can they really participate in their own defense? Think about how you were at 12 years old. You wouldn't have a clue what was going on. The judge sets a preliminary trial hearing. Months and months of preliminary hearings then occur with both sides going back and forth with multiple filings. August of 2015. Judge Bowen lifts his restriction on news media showing the girls' faces, and we see them for the first time. He also sets a date for trial. Again, months and months go by, this time a full year, with attorneys filing motion after motion. August of 2016. Morgan Geyser enters a plea of not guilty by reason of mental disease, and 2 doctors are ordered to evaluate her. Morgan was eventually diagnosed with schizophrenia, which is a disease that runs in her family. September of 2016. Anissa Wire pleads insanity. Everyone kind of saw this coming. They were prepared with a plea deal, and Anissa ends up pleading guilty to a lesser charge. She goes to trial in September of 2017 and is found not guilty by reason of mental disease. In December of 2017, she is committed to 25 years at the Winnebago Mental Health Institute. She is ordered to do a minimum of 3 years and is allowed a reevaluation after that. Just weeks ago, now in summer of 2021, Judge Bowen granted a conditional release for Anissa Wire, stating there is no, quote, clear and convincing evidence that the defendant poses a substantial risk of harm to others, herself, or serious property damage. The judge ordered that a conditional release plan be prepared and a hearing be set to put the release plan in place, and that hearing is scheduled just weeks from now on September 9th, 2021. February of 2018. Morgan Geyser, who had been held since September of 2017 in a state mental hospital, pled guilty as charged, but not criminally liable. She was then ordered committed to 40 years of mental health treatment and monitoring and will remain at a secure mental health institute. In January of 2019, Morgan's attorneys began filing challenges to the decision to try her as an adult. Her petition goes all the way to the state Supreme Court. In January of 2021, her petition was denied. She remains at the state mental hospital today. We will update this case when updates become available. It's a really terrifying case. I think for any parent, this case is their absolute worst nightmare. I feel for Peyton, I feel for her family, I feel for the family of the other girls, I feel for everyone involved. It's just a real tragedy. But above all, like I said, it's a cautionary tale. Watch those kids. Yes, they've got to have some privacy, but how much? Thank you for joining me today on Dining with Death, True Crime Tuesday. Please like and subscribe if you would like to see more. Your subscriptions and your views help us so much. Stay safe and be kind to each other. And I'll see you next time on Dining with Death. Bye.